Hi, so this is Contemporary Chinese Book 1, Lesson 1, and this is Dialogue 2. So let's have a look at the characters in this dialogue. We have on the left here, 同学们, 同学们. And we learned today in the lesson that 同学 means classmates. And we also learned that by adding 们 after certain words, for example, pronouns such as I, 我, you, 你, he or she, 他, that we can make them into plural. So after certain words like 同学, we can also add that. So that's referring to classmates. And here we have the name of the teacher, 张老师, 张老师. And we mentioned today that when we address somebody using the title of the job that they do, for example, in this case, Zhang is a teacher, so you can address him as 张老师, teacher Zhang. The surname comes first and the title comes afterwards. We have another character called Ma Li. Ma Li. And we'll soon learn from this dialogue where Ma Li comes from. So I think they're the only two. So let's have a look at the dialogue now. So the teacher starts off, the students start off greeting the teacher. 老师好. 老师好. And you notice with this greeting that the students actually use the teacher's title. They don't use the teacher's name. They could have said 张老师好. That's fine. Or just simply 老师好. And you'll find with a lot of different job titles like, manager and so on, you can do the same thing. You just use the title and you add 好 afterwards as a greeting. Okay, so this is how the teacher responds. 同学们好. 同学们好. I guess the first thing I'll point out here is the men and the fact that it's a neutral tone. So, as I said in the lecture, when you want to pronounce a neutral tone, what you do is you de-emphasize it. So, 同学们好. So here the teacher is also greeting the students in the same way, using, in a sense, their title. I mean, not that, classmates is a title, but it's what they are, what they do. They are students. So moving along, we then come to Ma Li, who's one of the students. And Ma Li asks a question. 您是不是林老师? 您是不是林老师? So here you notice it's a question because we have a question mark at the end. But if you look here, the question form that Ma Li is using is one of the ones that we discussed today, where you've got a verb and you've got 不 followed by the same verb. So in a way, it's the positive and the negative, the affirmative and the negative. And that makes the question. Now, the point to make here is, guys, where you have a question word in the sentence like that, you don't need to add ma at the end. In fact, you should not add ma in the end. So here's a general rule of thumb. Where there is already a question word in the sentence, don't add ma to the end of the sentence. So how does Zhang Laoshi reply? Zhang Laoshi says, 我不是林老师. 我是张老师. 我姓张, 叫张林. 你叫什么名字? So in a way, in Zhang Laoshi's little statement here, he's bringing together a lot of things grammatically from the lesson. So 我不是张老师. So we have our subject, we have our verb, we have our object. So he is saying something about himself. He's saying what he is, or in this case, what he isn't. And then Lin Lao Shi is who he is not. Notice here, 不 is an adverb because it's adding to the meaning of the verb. In this case, it's negating the verb, saying am not. And also notice the pronunciation up here, because, oops, I'm covering up that tone mark there, because the character or the word after 不 is also a fourth tone, so 不 becomes a second tone. 不是. Okay, 我是张老师，我姓张. So when you want to talk about your surname, you would say it that way. 我姓张, I am surnamed Zhang. 叫 Zhang Lin. So what's interesting here is, if you look at Zhang Laoshi's full name, in Chinese, many Chinese people's names are a single character for the surname, plus 2 characters for their given name. But there are also Chinese people that have the single character for the surname and a single character for their given name. And that's fairly common. So Zhang Laoshi is one of those category. And in that case, when Zhang Laoshi says, my name is, he's not going. He could say 我叫Lin, but Chinese like to say things in pairs often. It depends on the words, but they often like to have at least 2 syllables. And so in this case, it's more natural for the teacher to say 叫张林, because that's the 2 syllables. It's not for everything, but you'll notice that's a trait. If you look at Chinese vocabulary, there are lots of single character or single syllable words, but there are very many more, at least 2 character or more words. So and then Zhang Laoshi asked the question here, 你叫什么名字? And I'm pretty sure you guys know what that means. You knew it during the lecture. So he's asking, what is your name? What are you called? 你叫什么名字? Let me emphasize here, because 什么 is a question word that means what. Therefore, you do not add ma at the end of the sentence. You don't need it. Ma Li then says, 我叫Ma Li. So that's fairly straightforward. Zhang Laoshi then asks, 你是哪国人? And I mentioned in the lecture, well, we looked at it in the list, that 哪国人 means which country person. Let's look at Ma Li's response, and then I want to come back and look at Zhang Laoshi's question again. So just to repeat Zhang Laoshi's question, 你是哪国人? And Ma Li says, 我是澳大利亚人. And it's interesting. I mean, Ma Li has replaced the ni with a 我, because obviously Ma Li is referring to himself. And Ma Li has replaced the 哪国 with 澳大利亚, and has kept the 人 from 哪国人. So really, you substitute a country name for 哪国 and keep the 人. The other thing I wanted to point out was that when Zhang Laoshi is addressing Ma Li, notice that Zhang Laoshi uses 你 rather than 您, and that's because their status is different. Zhang Laoshi is the teacher, and in Chinese culture, teachers are respected, and of course, in their hierarchy of things, at a higher up in the hierarchy than a student. So when the students address the teacher, they use 您 to show respect. And when the teacher addresses the students, they use 你. Okay, so moving on to the next bit. So just going back, Ma Li has answered Zhang Laoshi's question and said, 我是澳大利亚人. And now Zhang Laoshi is moving on to a new student, Jiang Shan. And he wants to ask the same question he just asked Ma Li. So instead of repeating the whole thing, because Jiang Shan is there, he heard the original question, Zhang Laoshi just uses the nut question word, 你呢? And as we mentioned in the lecture, by doing that, it is then turning the same question around to ask someone else. And you? So then Jiang Shan replies in a similar way to Ma Li, 我叫江山，是 美国人。Then Zhang 老师 goes on to ask Wang Ying, 你也是美国人吗？你也是美国人吗？ So here we've got a new adverb, 也, and it's before our verb, 是。你也是美国人吗？ Wang Ying then replies, 不，我不是美国人，我是加拿大人。So I think that's fairly straightforward. Zhang 老师 then asks another question. 你说英语还是说法语？ So you notice here it's a question, and the question word that Zhang 老师 uses is 还是 or. So that being the case, doesn't need ma at the end of the sentence. So you speak English or speak French. Wang Ying then replies, 我说英语，我们都说英语。 So here you notice that Wang Ying has now added in 都 before the verb 说. And in this case, and also, sorry, by the way too, he's turned the pronoun from, when he's talking about himself to 我, about himself using 我, he then adds 们 in the second part of his reply, where he's referring to everyone in the class. So, and then he adds 都 to emphasize that it is everyone, all of them. And 都 is adding to the meaning of the verb here, and so therefore 都 is an adverb, and it comes before the verb 说. So then Wang Ying asks the question, 张老师，您说不说英语? So I'm pretty sure you've already figured out what the question word or question phrase is here. So it's 说不说, that's our verb plus negative verb. And as you see there, there's no ma. We don't need that. So Zhang 老师 then replies, 我不说英语，我只说汉语. So of the two, so in response to the students' questions, Zhang 老师 is being very specific, and he's added the adverb 只 before the verb 说, meaning I only speak English. Okay, so we'll see you in the next class.